St. Paul today is a friendly, quiet place. It's hard to believe that in the 1930s, these stately buildings concealed hardcore criminals and the deadly private armies trained to fight them.
Back in the 30s, a whole roster of disreputable characters and dangerous gangsters were living the good life here in St. Paul. They could knock over their banks, rob their mail trucks, commit their crimes, just do it outside the city limits. But with the city officials and police so thoroughly on the take, businesses and especially banks readied themselves for a war.
The unholy alliance between cops and crooks started falling apart in the 30s. Notorious gangster Alvin Creepy Karpus and his gang kidnapped wealthy marks, like members of the Schmidt beer empire. No one knew where the hoods would strike next, but one of the richest targets was the First National Bank. It was one of the largest in the Midwest, and I want to see just how far the bank went to protect millions in cash. Most of the building is office space now, but down in the basement, it's still 1931.
Supposed to meet this guy named Rick Rossi. Now, you make a heck of an entrance.
Rick is the current daytime property manager, and he's getting me the kind of special access crooks like Dillinger would have killed for.
Looks like a jail cell, doesn't it?
Well, it is pretty ominous. This was a gate that was kept closed all day, every day.
Yeah.
And then inside are the vaults themselves.
Oh, yeah.
In the 1930s, this is where lumber barons and railroad tycoons kept fortunes in gold, silver, and stacks of cash.
This is unbelievable, the size of these doors. I mean, really, did they need that big a door to keep things safe?
This certainly would have been dynamite-proof, I think, in the day.
Carved from a single block of steel, the 40-ton door is so perfectly balanced, I can move it with just my fingertips.
I don't understand, but I can certainly appreciate it.
Beyond this door and the metal gate, there was a huge payday waiting, with a catch.
Wow, that is an intimidating sight. Look at that.
We were actually almost in a bunker of sorts. It's concrete and steel enclosure all the way around.
Yeah. Each one of these is its own secure vault.
Right.
Different combinations and everything. Who was keeping their money in these places?
As I understand it, there was a lot of retail merchants and various operations. It might have been even smaller banks or branch banks.
The cash was deposited by legit businesses, who probably got a good portion of it from gangsters living the high life here in St. Paul.
It was very well fortified to thwart any threat from gangsters.
The effort to really secure this money falls to the bank itself.
Yes.
I mean, they can't depend on the cops.
And when it came to security, this place had every angle covered.
So this would have been the combination here.
You would have had two combinations that both people had to perform correctly in order to operate it. Those are gun ports. So they would have been overviewing the cash as it came and went. It's a steel-cased enclosure with...
And then there's a combination lock. Everything's a vault down here. Boy, you can really see the thickness of this glass. It's probably 2 inches thick of bulletproof glass. And then each one of these is its own little gun port.
Right.
And they'd be able to shoot from there knowing they couldn't be fired upon.
And just in case the Tommy guns weren't enough, there were toxic gas ports in the ceiling outside. Even with a brilliant and daring plan, gangsters would be crazy to take on the bank's security force.
This is the pistol range that they practice in?
Right.
Incredible. So this has the look of any kind of police academy. So there was training being done in use of firearms.
They had their own police staff.
How large a force did they have?
They had 24 officers on duty.
There's a lot of guys up there watching the floor and a lot down here watching the cash.
That's right. They had to shoot with a 90% accuracy a couple times a week.
Oh, yeah. So they fired in here, and then it's just ricocheted down into this. These are old bullets, aren't they? These guys are pretty bad shots over here, weren't they?
Well, they were using both pistols and Thompson submachine guns.
Okay. It's a statement of the times, isn't it, that they were facing an enemy of considerable strength who were living right smack in town.
The vaults and the guns and the armed guards was designed to put customers at ease.
An all-out assault on the bank's vault would have been suicidal, and the only other option, tunneling in, was definitely out.
What's back here? Little closet.
Well, Don, this is one of the areas that, as part of the design of the vaults, they had a void all the way around it.
The vault is completely encased in 2 feet of concrete, reinforced with steel and electrified. all around the outer shell is a 2-foot-wide crawl space that was checked regularly by the guards.
Yeah, here we go. Look at this. If anybody tried to get through the outer wall here into this vault, they would actually meet this void in between. So the guards could keep, observe all of these spaces around.
The protective crawl space stretches all the way over and under the vault as well.
There's nothing down here, but that's because it's a void. That's the idea. Well, you figure any bank in the 1930s, especially in the American Midwest, had to be really worried about getting robbed. But here in St. Paul, a city that made an unholy alliance with those gangsters, that had to be particularly on guard. And you see around me here, all throughout this bank, the extreme kind of measures that had to be taken to protect the wealth of St. Paul.
No one ever knocked over the First National, because gangsters in these parts may have been ruthless, brutal psychopaths, but they weren't stupid.